Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing well, ready for a
Good.
new week.
New week.
New week to go. Maybe this week there'll be less peace and more prosperity.
Or both, maybe,
Well,
if we're lucky.
some people who own some stocks today probably feel more prosperous, but I'm predicting it will not be lasting, even if it goes up in numbers. Things go down in real value, and that's the way things work on foreign policy. You hear a lot of things, a lot of agreements, and a lot of treaties made, and everything's going to be peaceful. It doesn't seem to work out that way. And it isn't that there's outside enemies wanting to attack us. I mean, we had a bit of a problem with an invasion here recently. You know, a lot of people invaded this country and they didn't have a right to be here.
Yes.
And it had to do with somebody here opening up the gates.
Yeah, no
Come
kidding.
on in, and we'll take care of you.
Free stuff.
So we have to try to sort all that out because we'd like to promote a system of government where you have a chance for peace and prosperity. But I tell you what, there's a couple people working behind the scenes, and I don't know how strong a word you can use with people who seem to be doing the opposite of what they should if they're working for peace and prosperity. But they've never confessed or claimed they were working for peace and prosperity of the kind that we want. But a couple senators got together. They're not our favorite senators.
Yeah.
They're a challenge to work with or against. But the two senators, Senator Cotton and Graham, worked to sabotage chances of Iran. That sabotage. Now, that's getting pretty close to being pretty strong language. But there's no doubt about it. They have not been our favorite senators, and but the two of them working together, you say, well, yeah, but now we have a new administration, and they're warmongers, and we have a president that's going to stop wars and not start any new ones. So this sounds like it's nothing to worry about. But for some reason, I still worry a little bit about it, and their efforts right now is to file up any effort to work with the Iranians in the past, and there's been that. But there's the thing in 2014, lies were told, by the CIA, and the war was started and justified what was going on. And here, once again, they have their nukes. And look how much population they can reach with. But did they ever look and see how many how many nukes from their enemies are around them? They're surrounding them by hundreds. And so they were now saying that we have to not even deal with them until they give up every bit of technology with nuclear, with uranium. And yet the investigations by the authorities, international authorities, going in there, and the way I understand it, there is no evidence that they're on the verge of a nuke or even have long-term plans for a nuke. They can't say next week they're going to decide, well, we're going to have a nuclear bomb. So there's a lot of dishonesty going on in here and a bad judgment. And unfortunately, they're not alone in the Congress, and they're not alone in the military-industrial complex. And a lot of other people just have hatred for the sake of hatred. So I think it's very serious, and hopefully the people wake up, because it's easy to start wars, but it's very difficult to end them.
Yeah, and the backdrop of what we're talking about today really is the president's upcoming trip to the Middle East. And I know you wrote about it this week, but he's traveling to Saudi Arabia. He's going to United Arab Emirates. And the third one, Qatar, maybe? It's not that. But anyway, so the point is, this is his first foreign trip. Traditionally, they would go to a NATO. President would go to a NATO ally country or to Mexico or something. But I think the fact that Trump's first foreign trip is not only to Middle Eastern Arab countries, but it will not include a stopover in Israel, is significant, and I think that's something that's important. And there have been some pretty amazing reports over the past week with regard to Trump. Now, of course, I think a lot of the rumors that Trump is breaking with Netanyahu, he's frustrated with Netanyahu. I think a lot of that is put out by PR because they want to set the stage for a more successful trip. So there's a little bit of tension that's in there, that's introduced in the media, will certainly smooth over relations with the Saudis and the rest of of those in the Middle East who are furious with Israel's behavior in the region. So you've had reports that he's pushed Netanyahu aside. You had reports that there have been some direct talks with Hamas with regard to the release of an Israeli-American soldier. And there's also talk of the U.S. getting involved with the Gaza aid. We're talking about 1 million people maybe facing starvation in Gaza, and the U.S. getting involved in providing that aid. And I think it was even Mike Huckabee, the president's extremely pro-Israel ambassador to Israel, said, we don't need anybody's permission to talk to anyone or to make any kind of a deal. So that's sort of what you're seeing. And then you're seeing a President Trump who desperately needs a foreign policy win. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in our second story. But he has sort of set himself up. Now, he promised big and hasn't delivered. So he needs to go to the Middle East and score some victories. Even a few small ones will be good. So that's, I think, what we're seeing. And so with that context in mind, put up that first clip, because as all of these things are coming together, we have our old friends, Senator Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham, warning President Trump, don't you dare make a deal with Iran. Of course, they want us to bomb Iran. But as you just said, Dr. Paul, they have put some unrealistic demands on this deal to tie President Trump's hands together so that he can't do any negotiating. Now, this is something we're looking at. This is Dave DeCamp wrote this late last week, and he points out that they're working together to sabotage the Trump administration's chances of reaching a deal with Iran. Now, you know, we've always been critical of presidents who overstep their constitutional authority, but the president does have the authority to make foreign policy. It seems to me, Dr. Paul, I don't know how you feel, that they're trying to usurp that authority to themselves.
Boy, that's for sure. You know, these guys, when they talk and design their policy, and they're really tough guys.
Yeah.
That's what they want to be.
Real
It seems
tough.
like consideration of the death of American lives, which always seem to happen when these wars break out. They have nothing. That's beyond them to be worried about that. How about innocent Iranian lives? That can't be possible. Iranians we're willing to get rid of them. You know, there are no more people than the Palestinians, so we get rid of the people. And they seem to have no concern or economic concern about the money they want to spend because they're stirring up a war. And it looks like we're having trouble paying our bills already.
Yeah.
You know, the deficits have been going up. And all these things are not holding them back. They get more aggressive. And the senators also repeated President Trump's threat.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
that there is no deal. The U.S. will attack. So where does the president stand on this?
Yeah, they're trying to thwart him. You know, it may shock a lot of Americans, and it probably would shock Graham and Cotton. But, you know, our friend Max Blumenthal, who spoke at our conference a couple years ago, great guy, he was actually in Iran over the weekend. He went to a synagogue and sat in on services there with the Jewish community of Iran. Now, of course, the neocons would have you believe that there's not a single Jewish person in Iran. They're all getting slaughtered or something. But in fact, there are, I forget how many, but there are plenty of synagogues there. And Blumenthal was there at a synagogue. But so what they wanted, what Graham, now in a way, they have some justification for this, Dr. Paul. And the fact that they want to blow up a Republican president's foreign policy, I think is not very wise. You wouldn't see that on the Democrat side. But what they're saying is that, you know, you yourself, President Trump, you got rid of the JCPOA deal. If you want to have a deal that's enduring and lasting, it has to be enshrined as a treaty, and it has to be passed by the Senate. And if you want to do that, you don't have a snowball's chance in you know where unless you do what we tell you. Now go to that next one, because this is what they're saying. And all of these things are a non-starter, by the way. This is great. Lindsey Graham, tough guy Lindsey Graham. To the Iranian regime, you claim all you want is peaceful nuclear power plant program. You can have it, but you cannot enrich, and you must dismantle. You must dismantle now. which she has no right to say. Even members of the IAEA, even the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, you're allowed to have peaceful enrichment. Now, here's the other thing. Now, you did suggest this, Dr. Paul. They want to go even further. If you go to that next clip, this is Lindsey again talking tough. A treaty with Iran in this space is only possible if you get 67 votes. Now, that's true. That's how they're holding Trump hostage. Graham continues, you're not going to get the 67 votes for a treaty regarding their nuclear program, and I highlighted this part, unless they deal with the missile program and their terrorism activity. So is it possible? Yes, if Iran changes. What they want is to do what they did to Libya, and they've even said it. You have to dismantle all of your weapons, and then we'll make a deal. And we might just overthrow you and kill you anyway.
Yeah.
So,
And then after they start some of these plans, all of a sudden they shift. And even if the country they're badgering moving in that direction, it doesn't faze them. They just get more aggressive and move faster because they wouldn't want peace to break out. That's what they're fearful of. And this enrichment for the uranium is up to 20. They do up to 20 to 60%, which is significant. But you need what do you need? 90 for building a bomb. And nobody says the inspectors are lying. I mean, it's not like they're nobody's to believe them. But what do they deal with that and talk about this? They don't touch the subject. Well, what are you talking about? They're ready to use a nuclear weapon and have it in no time. And then they go to the extreme. They don't even want them to have 3%.
Can't do anything.
Enrichment. So. And those are our friends. Those are our people in our Senate. And fortunately, they don't have a large majority of people. But I tell you what, all you have to do is have, one vessel blown up by a false flag, and then the American people will bend over anything in order to go to war.
Of course.
So, and these guys know that. They know that, and it wouldn't be a surprise to me that we have something like that happen. Because if they don't think they have an easy vote of 67, they're not going to get it. But they're going to badger, and they have the support of a lot of major media, and they have support of that group called the military-industrial complex, and that might be the greatest incentive of the whole thing. I mean, they don't want to run out of a war. No more wars. What kind of a world would that be? People who worked hard and produced something would get all the money.
No, the thing that they're trying to do, I mean, from what I understand, and obviously the details haven't been released, but the talks with Iran are going fairly well. And a lot of these issues that you just mentioned, now the enrichment to 20%, as you know, those are medical isotopes. And I think Iran leads in the region with cancer treatments. So they need that 20%. Although from what I understand, some of that is negotiable. Some of that higher levels of enrichment, according at least to some of the details that have come out, is that the Russians would serve as the guarantors of Iran standing by its obligations to the deal, which sounds pretty smart to me because Russia and Iran are both have developed a closer relationship. Russia has the incentive to not only make sure that Iran plays by its own rules, but to provide the enriched uranium, to be the facilitator. Okay, maybe you can't do 20, just for example, but we'll sell you it at 20, what have you. Or maybe even the Iranians would sell us some of their enriched uranium. That would be the best thing because they have very modern enrichment facilities. They may just sell us some. We need it, but these, these Republican senators who don't want to have this deal, they're just determined to thwart it.
Dealing with Iran and trying to get agreements, the American people will go along with this, but they will listen to these people who are, wanting to bomb this sort of thing, and that is the real problem, is getting the people to understand it. Now, non-interventionism is a theme that we like. We like non-entangling alliances, don't get involved in all these coups that bankrupt the country. Too many wars, too many people die. And I keep thinking, what if we would have had, say since World War II, now this is really a daydream, if we had stayed out of all this activity, what if we had just allowed, just stayed out of the Iranian people's lives? But it was in 1953 that we got really involved back there, and it was under Eisenhower. But it is something that people. I don't know what would have happened, but all I know is if you really study the Middle East history, the less foreigners involved there, the less wars there were. People can get along with differences, but if you have agitators and all kinds of special interests, money involved, and people who want to bomb and kill, that's where the problems come. But I think the hometown people should deal with these problems. So I think obviously it would be much better than this kind of nonsense going on. I mean, this thing that they get this so much, it is so much, and it gets all this attention that they're representing, humanity. And of course, I see it the other way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the second one we're looking at is a related story, which is the frustration that President Trump is feeling. You can put this next one on. This is a piece in the Wall Street Journal that came out a couple days ago, I guess, maybe yesterday. Trump promised to end 2 wars quickly. In private, he admits he's frustrated. Now go to that next one. He was meeting with donors in Florida last week. He said, when President Trump spoke to a room of top donors at his Florida club last week, he described ending Russia's war in Ukraine as a growing frustration that keeps him up at night, the people in the room said. Russian President Vladimir Putin was particularly tough to negotiate with and wanted the whole thing, Trump said, referring to Ukraine, according to an attendee. His comments came in response to a donor's question about his biggest foreign policy concerns. Now, we've talked about it on the show many times, Dr. Paul, and part of the problem that Trump has is that he can't solve this problem because he doesn't understand it. He surrounded himself by people like General Keith Kellogg, who keep telling him that Russia is losing, that they're desperate for a deal, they'll sign anything, they'll do a ceasefire, where in fact it's objectively understood even by Russia's most serious adversaries that Russia is winning the war. They have won the war. Ukraine has made no significant headway since 2023, and that was only temporary. So the fact is, it's just logical. If you are a victor in a war, you don't capitulate at the end. I mean, it's just a fact. It doesn't matter if you like Russia or hate Russia. When you're winning a war, you don't capitulate. You don't lay down your arms and say, okay, guys, we're gonna go home. Like we've said on the show before, when the Allies just got short of Berlin, they didn't say, okay, you guys can keep it. It's fine. We'll back off. And so he doesn't understand that Russia not giving up to the terms that Trump has proposed is that he doesn't understand the nature of this war. No one is telling him the facts on the ground. And that's what's frustrating him. And that's why we talked about it before. We're not going to do the story today, but Trump approved 200 more missiles going to Ukraine. They're not going to be viewed as an honest broker. It's not going to make Putin want to sit down and have a conversation. No, it's not. It's going to do the opposite. So he's doing all the wrong things and he's expecting a different result.
When he's been asked or he had to address the subjects that things aren't going quite as he has promised, he said, that was a little hyperbole on his part.
Yeah.
So, a little bit. I think it's constant. So,
and the other one is Gaza they talked about. And if you put that next one up, he's frustrated that he's not having success there. But then again, he's the one who gave Netanyahu the green light to go in and start mowing more people down. But here's a piece from the Wall Street Journal. They said the war in Gaza was also notably challenging, Trump told the crowd. Finding any solution was hard because, quote, they'd been fighting for 1,000 years, he said. Now, once again, that displays a fundamental lack of understanding of the current conflict. They had not been fighting for 1,000 years. They had been fighting since 1948, when a bunch of Palestinians were kicked off of their land because the UN decided to make a new country where they were already living. So not understanding the causes of the conflict means you can't settle the conflict. That's a fundamental thing that is unfortunately bypassing him.
But I learned during the debates that the attitude that people have, how they resolve this, they just simply say, well, they're not a
Yeah,
people.
they
They're
don't
not. How
exist.
could you have a country if you're not a people? And that was accepted by so many people, and I keep repeating it. Except now there's there's blowback from that, because just think of the use of this argument in this country today. So if you're a perfectly peaceful person and you take the position that explaining maybe the Palestinian has a point or two, they can get kicked out of school
Oh
or
yeah,
lose a job.
lose a
And,
job.
that's one thing I'm concerned about, is that the violation of the First Amendment. As soon as when you're is so much involved with money and threats and bombs and support of national defense, you can get people so dependent on you they have to do what you tell them,
Yeah.
and that's what's happening now. So, and we see more of that than ever with the universities. It just, there was an article today. Somebody was arrested and punished, or he had to stand up. He wasn't even at the rally.
Yeah.
He was just said something. He was sympathetic, or I don't know what he did, but it is getting bad because you're not allowed to speak out about this. But I still think local folks should take care of this, and all the bullies that come from around the world threatening violence. That's the
Yeah,
wrong way
yeah.
to go.
And the other thing is too is that Trump's base is increasingly becoming dissatisfied with these things. And there's an article, I don't have it in front of me, but they mentioned Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's been very vocal lately. Even though we talked about her, I think on Thursday, even though she's a strong supporter of Israel, she said we don't need to be fighting their wars for them. Tucker Carlson has said the same thing. He's had many people on his show saying the same thing. So Trump is not he's finally starting to realize that opposition for his blind support for Israel is not coming from the wacky left, but there's also a deep core of the MAGA people who don't want to be involved in the Middle East. They want to rebuild this country, which is not a bad idea. And so I think he's finally starting to hear this kind of thing, which is an important message.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the third one we want to cover is one that we have talked about. And for me personally, and I know you feel the same way because you did a lot of work on the Hill about the National Endowment for Democracy.
boy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What they're doing, it's really a weird setup. It's government money, taxpayers' money. It's a private organization. And in economics, when you start mixing government and economics, you end up with, a fascist type of system, as at least special business, special benefit. But here it's ideological in the sense of how you propagandize and how you stir up trouble and how you stir up and get involved in coups and the contests you have in trade and all these things. But they're very powerful. But I think before I have admitted that I didn't realize how big it was. So that
Yeah.
was one benefit of what Trump did and others did looking into this, because that is huge. And so and it looks like they're fighting back, and they have a lot of people on their side. And here we were led to believe, we're going to cut that money out of there. So I think there was an over optimism on all those cuts, because right now, every single day, it looks like there's going to be the blowback from what they were proposing to cut. All I think was good, and I thought, boy, this is one thing that is really good. But it doesn't. To me, it looks like it's fading. The real results from it.
Yeah, for non-interventionists, yourself and myself particularly, we stood up and cheered when they said, USAID, we're going to shut it down. National Endowment for Democracy, what they do is they're the regime change organization. And as you point out, they have no accountability because they're a private company that's funded by government. So you can't tell us what to do, but give us money. And so when that was announced, and this is the greatest achievement of Musk, I think, when his people came in there and said, nope, don't need that, don't need that. United States Institute of Peace, don't need that. National Endowment for Democracy, don't need that. That was fantastic. That was dismantling the deep state really where it lives. And as an example of how furious the neocons and deep staters were, here's just one piece from arch neocon Max Boot. You remember Max Boot?
Oh, boy.
When Musk was going after the National Endowment for Democracy, Max Boot flipped his lid. While Musk dismantles a pro-democracy group, America's enemies cheer. That's a classic neocon, breathless kind of thing. Now go to the next one. This is Max Boot saying how fantastic the National Endowment for Democracy is. They've been they funding 2,000 grant recipients in 1,000 countries. Now your first question is, why are we doing that? But these are the organizations such as the Cuban Democratic Directorate. Okay, they're trying to overthrow the Cuban government. The World Uyghur Congress, they're trying to overthrow the Chinese government. These are both CIA operations that are endorsed by NED. And that's his example, because that's what they do. They overthrow governments. They disrupt. They run the media in other countries and call it free and fair media. So Max Boot absolutely livid when they were about to cut it, which should, for us, say that means it's a good idea to cut.
I'm amazed at how they were able to take the word democracy and turn it into a sacred goal.
A god.
It's godlike.
That's
true. Yeah, that's it. So here it is. We have a constitution. We have some brilliant people writing up. They detested the word. They wouldn't put the word in the constitution. And yet they had a system that circumvented that. And it was explicit that they wanted to deliver a republic to the future Americans in to this country, and they did that. But immediately, and here they are, and here their whole goal was promoting democracy over and over and over again. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think it's just carelessness and not just semantics. They convince people that they sort of endorse the tyranny of democracy, the tyranny of the majority. Get them together. So all you have to do is get a few special interest groups together, and they're the majority, and that undermines everything. So I just cringe when they talk about spreading democracy, make America safe, world safe for democracy.
What's even worse is they don't even promote democracy. For them, democracy means the right candidate overseas wins. They hate the people running Georgia right now because they won't buy into the regime change for Russia. They hate people like Georgescu in Romania because he's not on board for NATO. For attacks on Russia. So democracy for people in the NED means our guy wins. Otherwise, it's not democratic.
But they did this on purpose to get everybody now. I mean, who now stands up and say, I don't think we should have democracy as they use it. But they've made sure that the people have a different understanding of it, and they get away with doing what they do, and that's tyrannical activity.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, they're getting away with it.
Well, as we cheered Musk in the dismantling of NED and USAID, and that was really, despite some of our disappointments in the last few weeks with President Trump, that really stood out. Sadly, and I found this out last night and I sent it to you, it turns out that even that great achievement has been reversed. We can't blame Musk for it. Musk brought it to our attention, got it redlined, but Congress did nothing. Congress did not move to make these cuts permanent. They did not put out a rescission bill to send that money back. So what happens in D.C. if that money's floating around? Someone grabs it. Put on that NED press release if you can. It's a couple ahead. I'll skip a couple. Go to that go forward one. There we go. So the National Endowment for Democracy on the 10th, just 2 days ago, put out a press release. NED welcomes State Department's initial steps toward restoring funding. State Department, i.e. Marco Rubio, he saw that money floating around. He loves regime change. He loves all this stuff. And so he started restoring the money.
I think that was reflecting the neglect and understanding by the majority of people in the Congress.
Yeah.
And they're not fighting
They don't
back.
care.
Yeah. Matter of fact, they're first in line. They get their programs back in. Yet they played those games during the campaign, and it's still not a very safe political thing to do, to point some of the things out that we're talking about. But eventually, when more people see, when they see the end of the first fiscal year of the new administration, they're already talking about trillions of dollars, that are going to be spent, and no real cuts are occurring.
Yeah.
And they're limping along, and I think they know it, and I think they're making their plans, but I think also it's the motivation for a lot more people talking about alternative currencies and
Yeah.
the use of gold and silver as money again. So and I think the insiders will do this too if they find out that China and others rule the day. The others will have to go along with it, because I think markets are always more powerful than the governments themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here is, go to the next one. This is from the press release. This is them tooting their horn. They are thrilled. Today, the National Endowment for Democracy regained access to congressionally appropriated funds. That is because, once again, Dr. Paul, that Congress did not act to take those funds back. They neglected. They were too busy renaming post offices and passing ridiculous resolutions. So congressionally appropriated funds that have been unavailable since late January. NED welcomes the State Department's action, Marco Rubio, regime change guy, Neocon, to lift the restrictions on restoring their money. Now here is, you remember Peter Roskam, probably not a bad guy, but a big-time neocon. He was in Congress. Now he's the chairman of the board of NED. He says, "We commend the State Department for this move under Secretary Rubio's leadership." Now here's what he wants. He says it right here. "These are important steps toward fully restoring our ability to support frontline defenders of democracy in repressive regimes, including Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, China, Russia, and elsewhere." i.e., he's reaffirming that they're going back to their undercover regime change operations in all of these places. So everything that we cheered about has been taken away from us thanks to Congress and Marco Rubio.
Unfortunately. And I'm not one bit surprised, because the momentum is so great. And I've always argued that the political power to stop the cuts would be there. Because I can remember Leonard Reed saying, everybody wants to cut, but everybody has a but.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm for that. But if it has to do with my district, that's why, have you noticed, Daniel? I think you're the one that pointed out to me. They build airplanes in 50 different states.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody has to have now
we have
to get the parts from overseas. Then we play games with tariffs.
Yeah.
And we need the parts to take care of our automobiles, but we still put on tariffs.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to close out, but I do want to do a shout out to Brian Berletic, because he's the one who initially posted this on X. I think it was last night. And if you can go to that very last clip, I want to just make one point. He made some very good points. I encourage people to follow him and look at his points on this. But if you go to that very last clip, this is something else. They were vulnerable. And the reason that NED was vulnerable is because Musk and his people and the rest of us, you went and looked through their grants and they said, they're giving $100,000 for this? They're giving $1 million for that? This is unbelievable. That's when it made them vulnerable. So they put up a new policy, and I have it highlighted there. The NED, for its part, has announced that it will no longer disclose the organizations and political opposition groups it is funding around the globe, making exposing U.S. interference more difficult. In other words, they've gone dark. So we don't have any idea.
Not more difficult, but
Impossible.
without observation, people, they're going to get away with more.
Yeah. They've actually become the CIA. They were supposed to be the CIA in the open. They've reverted now to being like the CIA.
Well, maybe they all worked for the Federal Reserve for a while.
Yeah.
Hide it.
Hide everything.
We deal in trillions and trillions of dollars, but people don't have a right to know all these kind of things.
Yeah. Well, I'll close out and thank everyone for watching the show today. And please remember to hit that thumbs up or like. And please remember to subscribe and comment. Let us know, what do you think we got wrong? What do we get right? What do you think about it? We always read our comments, and they always inform the things that we decide to do. We want to make the show interesting for you. So be a part of it if you can. Dr. Paul, over to you.
Good. It's not exactly the most exciting thing to do, to report something that you strongly believe that it becomes a negative politically. And that is what we're dealing with right now is there are a lot of promises, a lot of excitement, and we try to join in and encourage it all. And it's dawning on a lot of people that the people who want more, 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 and they don't care about constitutional law or morality or natural law, they gang up on the people who want to cut, and they deal in terms of humanity and religious beliefs and the whole works, and try to put a guilt trip on anybody that's opposed to this instead of people realizing. So I think the whole issue does fall back to education, people understanding the nature of government and educating the public. I cite so often the education that people had during COVID when things got more than they could handle, and that attitude is still around. So information, and yet the one of the biggest attack, and it's increasing, is the attack on the First Amendment, because the truth is, an enemy of empires, and they're not about to let the truth come out. We'll do our best to bring you the truth as often as possible, because I don't know any other way to combat the troubles that we're facing. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.